Welcome friends. As you can see that I have a rectangular shaped block with me. You can assume that the mass of this block is capital M. What I am going to do is I would perform a few tricks with this particular block and then we would proceed and solve problems in relation to these tricks. Okay. The first trick that I am going to perform is very simple. It's not related to whatever we are studying right now, that is rotational motion, but in fact to a very simple topic which you had studied earlier, that is friction. You can see that this block is kept on this surface and there is some friction between this block and the surface. So if I apply a small force onto this block, see, I am applying a small force, but the block is not moving as a result of that force. Why? Because the applied force is less than the static friction, maximum static friction that can occur between the block and the surface. Now, I increase the force a little bit and what happens? The block starts moving towards that side, okay, towards your left on the screen. Now, let me change the edge of the block which is on contact with the surface. I have taken a slightly smaller edge as my contact with the surface. Now again, I apply a force. You see that the block is moving towards the left, okay? It's having a translational kind of a motion towards the left. There is no rotational motion. But now observe. Instead of applying the force over here, I start applying the force over here, okay? Still, the block is moving towards the left. But what happens if I apply a higher force? See what happens now. Okay, what happened? Instead of the block moving in a linear fashion, now the block fell onto the surface in this kind of a motion. Observe again, observe carefully what is actually happening. So, I apply the larger force, it falls. Basically, the block kind of rotates in this manner. Instead of moving in the linear fashion, the block rotated, okay? This is the second trick that I wanted to show you. The first trick was simple. The second trick, a little bit more complicated. We would be analyzing this situation with a problem. Why does the block move in a linear fashion if I give a small force? But if I apply a higher force, the block falls. Okay? Now, another trick. I change the edge of the block again. Now, it's on this surface, okay? Basically, the surface is same, but in front of you, you have a shorter edge. Now, if I apply a force onto the block, what happens? See, if I apply a small force, the block moves towards the left. In fact, if I apply the force near the center of mass, the block moves towards the left. If I apply the force over here, the block falls. Okay? Again, observe carefully. I apply the force and the block falls. Now see, I drew something else. Instead of applying the force over here, I apply the force towards the bottom and give a high force. Now see what happens. What did happen? Till now, the block was falling on in an anti-clockwise kind of a motion on this edge, right? The block was going like this and falling over, or in fact rotating about this edge. When I apply a higher force towards the bottom, how did the block move? The block moved in this kind of a fashion about this edge. It fell. What led to the change in the motion of the block? So basically, the block initially was having a linear fashion. In fact, initially the block didn't move in spite of me applying a force. Then the block, with the application of the small force, moved linearly towards the left. Then when I applied a force towards the top, the block fell in this kind of an anti-clockwise motion. But when I apply a force towards the bottom, high force, the block falls with a clockwise kind of a motion about this edge. What is leading to these various different kind of behavior of the block? We would be studying this. In fact, we would be solving problems on these particular tricks, the various tricks that I have performed, and these problems are coming up in the series of follow-up videos to this particular video. Okay, so see you in the next video where we start analyzing the most simple of the cases and then we would get into the more complicated ones. Thank you.